Banksy is an enigma. We don't actually know who he is. I don't know when he was born. We don't know much about him, and this anonymity may be the most important key to understanding Banksy as an artist. This may or may not be a photo of him. No one's really entirely sure. We know that he grew up in Bristol. We know that he will travel and work with an artist by the name of Blaclarat in Paris, and he's known for his satirical works, this being a recent one that happened early in the COVID crisis. This was around April of 2020. He had this depicted, the idea of memorializing the dead while destroying the country in many ways. It was in part a reaction to Black Lives Matter happening in conjunction with COVID and everything else in the spring and summer of 2020. So maybe it was later. It was probably May or June of 2020. He's also known for his depictions of so-called brandalism, the idea of brands taking the place of religion and nations within the larger society. Here, 3 children raising a Tesco flag and giving a pledge to it. He's also known for, well, satirizing the art market, as he did in about 2017 or 2018. One of his pieces auctioned. This was a very rare event, and as soon as the final hammer fell, it shredded. The piece here on the right is the actual image, and it shredded about 3/4 of the way down, and then the shredder hidden within the frame jammed. The other image is what was supposed to happen, this coming from Banksy himself, depicting how the piece was supposed to completely shred upon the final hammer. So with this background, someone who is satirizing the entire society around him, let's look at a couple of his works. This specific piece of artwork, Mobile Lovers, was created in April of 2014 in Banksy's hometown of Bristol, England. And it conveys the message of the importance of living in the moment. Now, the piece itself has a little bit of a story to it before I get into everything else. It is rumored that Banksy saw a story about a boys' club that would be closing in town because it ran out of funds. He found the only piece of that wall that was removable, this plywood that was clearly meant to close off some kind of entryway through the otherwise stone wall, and painted Mobile Lovers. The idea being that the piece could be created and then auctioned by the boys' club, bringing enough money to allow them to continue. So sometimes artists do the right thing, and this is one of those circumstances. That being said, it created a lot of controversy as well. There was controversy over who owned the piece because the boys' club actually leased the building. So was it owned by the council who owned the building? Was it owned by the boys' club, etc.? The boys' club ended up getting it, and everything worked out. Now, that being said, let's look at the piece itself. As we zoom in, you will notice these 2 people. They seem to be in a lover's embrace, except they're looking over each other's shoulders at their phones. And there's a lot of possibility here. This is an intentionally ambiguous image. It could mean a lot of things. You could read this as them putting their phones above each other. You could read this as somehow, especially in the age of Tinder, that they're possibly cheating while with each other or not being present. There's a lot of possibilities. And had he made it more concrete, it wouldn't have all of those possible meanings and connotations. So let's go into it. Let's explore it a little bit. Now, according to Banksy, or one would argue based on this painting, according to Banksy, in today's society, people are consumed by technology and living their lives through their phones. However, living through a phone deprives a person of making real-life connections with people. This piece of art is influenced by this overpowering use of technology, or would appear to be. Banksy feels that people are spending too much time on their phones and social media, not enough time living in the moment with the people they genuinely care about. Now, let me leave you with that for 1 second. Imagine if cell phones had been invented in the 1970s. They were, but imagine smartphones, Apple, Android, etc. You're telling me that in the 1970s, our parents' generation, maybe your grandparents' generation at this point, wouldn't have taken advantage of that. What you're seeing is not a problem with a generation, it's a problem with the human brain interacting with the technology. But that is sort of an issue in of itself. The couple in the artwork are acting as if they're paying attention to each other, but in reality, their attention is focused on their phone. And we're always hearing about this, people being attached to their phones. And of course, a phone, when you think about it, especially in an age where anxiety is at an unusual high, the phone is a very secure way of messaging someone, of contacting someone. Let's consider 2 scenarios. In one, you go over to someone's house, you don't know if they're home, you knock at the door, and even if they open the door, you have to explain why you're there. There's the interaction going on. Everything is visible. Everything is there. And it could raise some people's anxiety level. Whereas I could just as easily pick up my phone and say, "How's it going today?" And if they don't respond, it's not that big of a deal because I could send that to 15 people. So it's kind of missing the connection element that goes along with these phones. That it's not entirely about missing out on the present, but possibly also about some level of connection that previous generations couldn't have. Now, why do I bring this up with Mobile Lovers? Because Banksy, given his time frame, given when he's been active, is probably in his late 30s to early 50s. It puts him right into, assuming you're a college student, roughly your parents' generation, give or take. And that means that they are a generation who didn't have these things, and so all new things are kind of optional to them. So it changes how we look at things. When you understand the artist, sometimes something as simple as the artist's age, you start to see where they're coming from, and that maybe this is more boomer humor than it is a serious shot against technology. Now, that being said, he does have a point. After all, living in the moment is the best way to appreciate life and all the opportunities and connections that a person can have. Yet technology could be argued to be keeping us from living in the moment, therefore keeping us from living our lives to the fullest. And we're going to find out about that more than likely in the coming generations when we have parents who are on their phones as much as their kids and we start losing that interaction, we see what happens. It is very possible everything's fine. It's very possible Banksy's right, and this will serve as a great warning to the human population. Either way, it's a brilliant piece using very clear iconography or imagery to get across a somewhat ambiguous message based on where you stand, what generation really you're in when you view it.